Well, hello. Um, let's see if people are gonna. Oh no. Um. Oh. Okay. I think I got that. Hey, thanks for joining me. Um. All right. Bit of an impromptu stream, but I had some stuff to do, and I figured share it with the world. How you doing, Hikaru? Um. Hopefully you can hear me. OBS says there's audio, so it shouldn't be muted. All right. You boosted the Discord server. Thanks. I appreciate that a lot. Um. I'm quiet. Okay. Yeah, you're right, actually. Let's see what we can do about that. Mm-hmm. But not a whole lot. Um, I do have a noise gate, and I guess I can just add a compressor. La la la. And stick some gain. Hopefully that's a lot of gain. I have no idea how that sounds, but hopefully we're doing okay. Do I work on the Pokerphone F1? Well, I work on the Oneplus 6 mostly. I don't actually own a Pokerphone F1, but because we share all of the platform support, i.e. the SoC, it's pretty similar. I apologize if you guys can hear the bird noises, but it's too warm here to at the window. Mic is fine, that's good to hear. Ah, YouTube doesn't like my bitrate. It's been too long since I last streamed. Um, if text is blurry, let me know and I'll adjust it. Maybe that would be better. So we're not actually doing 8:45 stuff right now. I have some time to kill, and I have some patches to upstream, so Alright. The one thing I'm not sure how to solve best is streaming with a 4K monitor. I mean, I could set the monitor to 1080p, but then I lose like a whole bunch of a whole bunch of space. Hey from Twitter, nice to see you. So, for those not following along, or who, aren't super into the Pine 64 stuff, um, there was recently some work to fix the light and proximity sensor. I didn't know that it wasn't working before, but there you go. So it turns out that it needs a interrupt, and it uses a GPIO as an interrupt. And that's not an issue, that's a pretty standard thing to do. So basically, you configure the GPIO as an input, and the GPIO controller hardware is capable of like detecting a state change in the GPIO and firing an interrupt. So that's all very standard stuff. However, the GPIO controller driver used by the PinePhone Pro and like other RK3399 devices, for some reason, oh sorry, not the GPIO controller driver, but the pin control driver. So these are two different abstractions on the same thing. Basically, you have the GPIOs, which are like, if you've ever used like an Arduino, like one of these, this Arduino, very blurry Arduino. You get a bunch of pins, those are called GPIOs, and you can control them. You can like configure them as inputs or outputs and read them and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah. So you have a general GPIO thing, and drivers can be like, hey, I need this GPIO and I need to drive it high or low or whatever to, for example, like reset a device. You usually have the reset line hooked up to a GPIO, so you just toggle it and that's your reset. There's also this concept of pin control in the Linux kernel, which is essentially a more kind of generic abstraction where a driver can say, like, I have a bunch of pins that do different things, and in this case, I need this pin to be configured for use as an interrupt. And so rather than have the driver have to go and manually configure the GPIO itself, the driver just says, I have this interrupt, it's like this GPIO, in this case RKPD3 is the GPIO. Hey thanks. Too complicated? I can slow it down. Or if people have questions, throw them in chat and I will do my best to answer them. Essentially we're trying to summarize what this patch series is, why we need it. So yeah, rather than have this light sensor driver have to go like manually configure the GPIO as an input and like register stuff, all we need is this 2 lines in device tree which declare, hey, this GPIO 4, this is a bank of GPIOs. This is responsible for our interrupt, and our interrupt is this particular GPIO, and we want it to fire whenever the state changes from high to low. That's what edge falling means. And then the pin control subsystem takes care of configuring everything for you. So it's quite nice. Bye, thanks. Yeah. I do apologize if I'm going too fast. Do let me know. So that's essentially how that works. It's quite nice. It saves everyone a lot of time and it saves duplicating code. And the Rockchip drivers are, well, let's just say I prefer the Qualcomm ones. I'm not super familiar with pin control and GPIO. I've never had to work on it. So I'm absolutely not the best person to ask about this stuff. But I do think it's quite interesting, and you know, it's always good to kind of learn new things and like grow more knowledge. Oh, thank you, Mint. And yeah, so different platforms take different approaches to implementing this in the kernel. On Qualcomm, you have this like one driver which deals with let's see, GPIO4. So this is the Rockchip pin control stuff in device tree, and I think it's all a bit confusing, and it could be simplified here. They have all of these GPIO banks with different addresses, and they're all kind of handled as like different drivers for different devices, compared to on like a Qualcomm platform. Hey, Martijn, good to see you. Where you just have like the GPIO. Let's take a look. So on Qualcomm, we have this pin control, and it's just, that's it. It's just this. And then all of these are different configurations for pins, which are usually like generic across all devices. So like configuring the SPI, I2C, and stuff like that. So this is quite simple. This is quite complicated, and this is kind of bitten the maintainers a bit, because these two drivers used to be shared, and this is a common thing. On Qualcomm, the pin control and GPIO drivers are shared. It's one device driver which does both things. Whereas Rockchip, they decided to split it up, and it caused some problems, to be blunt, which had to be solved in pretty weird ways. So let's take a look at these patches. Actually, before we do, we need to learn a little bit about how the pin configs are set. So the pin control driver lets you say lets you set parameters on a pin. For example, disabling the bias, like pulling the pin up or down, or configuring it as an output or an input, that kind of stuff. And for configuring it as an output, you have to call into the GPIO part of the driver. But because they split it into a separate driver, that means they now have to call from the pin control driver to the GPIO driver, which would not usually be too much of an issue. But for whatever reason, both of these drivers probe on the same device tree node. So the GPIO driver, this is the device tree compatibles that it uses. It matches against each of these GPIO banks is a new driver. And similarly on the pin control, it matches the pin control. So what I said before is slightly incorrect. But the endpoint is, so this pin control driver probes, and it goes through all of the things that the kernel wants to configure all the pins. So for all of the pins, it has this function called which goes through and it tries to configure all the pins to be correct for what all the drivers want. And when you're configuring a pin as an output or as an input, it has to call the GPIO driver. But the GPIO driver matches these, which are child nodes, the pin control. which in short means that the GPIO driver will always probe, will always initialize after the pin control driver. Which means that the pin control driver can't call the GPIO driver, which is a bit tricky. I didn't anticipate going into this much detail, but here we are. So it means that you end up needing some complexity and locking and having to generate a list of pins to be configured later. And then the GPIO driver at the end of its probe function has to then go through the list of pins and configure them properly. Not very fun. Yeah, so in order to okay, let's rewind a bit. So our original problem is we need to configure the light sensor interrupt. Where is it? Oh, it's a Pinebook. This needs to be configured as an input. And that's dealt with by specifying this pin control. This is the interrupt pin, and it needs to be input enable. Previously, this pin control driver simply did not have this input enable case. It just wasn't there. And it had a bunch of handling specific to configuring a pin as an output because that was supported. And so it had to deal with all this pin deferring and all this complex logic and stuff. And it basically meant that adding support for the second way of configuring the GPIOs required a bunch of code and hasn't been very fun. So yeah, these 5 commits need to go upstream, or actually not all of them, because the PinePhone Pro is not in upstream Linux yet. Please fix. Hopefully that will change in the relatively near future. But yeah, the rest of these need to go. And there are a few final things that I need on my patch. So you can see how I upstream patches. Oh. We'll check it on new branch based on 5.17, and then oopsies. Cherry pick our patches. So the fixes, firstly, I thought I could take a shortcut here and all these two values together, but that only works when these are bits. And they are not. They're just numbers. Will IntelliSense find them? Probably not. So we have to do this. I do wish there was a easier way to kind of handle this. YouTube keeps telling me that the bitrate is too low, but I think it's wrong. Shenzhen IO. I have no idea what that is. Why am I too fast? Oh, that's cool. Okay, I guess the OBS configuration I'm using is like variable bitrate, and because a lot of this is just text, the bitrate can get pretty low. Oh, I do remember seeing someone play that game once. Okay, so this is first little fix. There were some others, but those people did not leave feedback on this merge request. They just told me their issues in chat, which means I have to remember them. Was fun. So we need input high. Oh, what was it? Input pull up, yeah. And then input pull down. Is that bias pull down? Yep, okay. What drive strength do we need? 2 is usually good, right? So that'll do. Oh, is you playing Shenzhen IO Martine? That's the one where you end up with your own assembler, right? Or your own assembly language. Oof. Alright. Well, there's been so much stuff going on recently. On top of this, there's Pixel 3, which some of you may have seen. I am expanding out. It's no longer just a Oneplus thing. I don't know how you will feel about that. Oh, neat. 12 instructions is not very many. Yeah. Sounds like could be interesting. Why play Shenzhen IO when you can write a 6502 emulator though? Tux845 is a pretty good name. Actually. I like that. Oh, my camera has died. I'm just gonna buy a webcam sometime, I think. Because this is annoying. And it's also a pain whenever I want to like use the camera for anything else. I think there was one other thing. But I have no idea what it was. I wonder if I'll find it in the chat. Oh no. Just turn the lights off. Ooh. I'm gonna have a tough time finding this, aren't I? How busy is the Pine64 dev room? Oh. That wasn't too bad. Ah, I found it. It was that I can use U8 for param. Amazing. Let's do that then. Pin control rockchip dot h. Okie dokie. Enum pin config param. Ah, even better. Although I don't know if I can use that. Do I need to like forward declare it or something? What am I using as a camera? Well, I have a Canon EOS M50, which I bought for photography. It's not designed to be a webcam, as you can tell from the fact that it turns off every 30 minutes, and I'm using the HDMI out. So I think webcam is probably called for at this point. Oneplus. Well, I did use phone as a camera in previous streams. Not for me though, but for like doing development. So you could actually see the phone screen. I need to get a proper setup sometime. And who knows? Yeah, webcams do suck. But, well, if I can find a cheap camera that can do HDMI out. Alright, so I think that's it. Now we can just not use all of my cores because stream will die. Droid cam is a blessing, although it would be nice if it could get slightly better quality. Is it worth the time taken to boot test this? Maybe. Yeah, waiting for the code to compile. That's always a good way to spend time. Runs faster than your laptop? Well, I'd hope so. Is there any risk of corrupting hardware whilst writing your own custom drivers for a phone? Yes. The risk is very small, and it certainly depends on what you're working on. Usually the hardware is built to kind of prevent that stuff, but if, for example, some regulator is being used to power like the touchscreen, and the touchscreen wants 3 volts, but the regulator can go higher, that could be an issue. But really, it's usually not. Most components run at 3 volts or 3.3 volts. if stuff's running at 1.8 and the regulator can be configured 3.3, you could cause some problems. But again, that's like step one is make sure your regulators are configured properly. I do have a pretty hefty stack of phones to work on now, and no time for any of it. This is the first PinePhone Pro kernel development I've worked on. Oof. It's been fun. I have to say, there's one thing which I think is it is a lot easier to do incremental development on an Android device than on a PinePhone. With an Android device, you can you reboot to fastboot and you flash your new images and that's it. With the PinePhone, you've got to take the battery out, pull out the micro SD card, put it in your computer, flash a new image to it, which takes a long time because micro SD is not very fast. And then put it back in the phone, and then put the battery back in, and then boot it. And it's like, that is a lot of work to test like a one-line kernel patch. So, I don't know. That's been the biggest reason why I don't think I've done PinePhone work. And that doesn't really seem to be a solution. You can have stuff like mass storage modes, which Talboot now has, which is cool. But it mostly solves the problem, I think. It's still a little bit slower than like fastboot, where you flash individual partitions, but yeah. This looks different to how I remember it. Oh, they call their updates firmware updates. Nice. Calboot. Calboot. Cannot read this. Oh, it's assembly. Amazing. This seems like a really cool game. There was something else I was considering doing today, which was trying to make touch work on the Pixel 3. But I'm not sure. Apparently there is a so for the touchscreen, there's a driver already in mainline that supports it, but it doesn't work very well on something. So, let's have a look. Touchscreen. STFTF. FTS. Very helpful. Hmm. Do I have a Pixel 3 downstream kernel? I don't think I do. Damn, that sucks. Boop, boop, boop. Android device, Google Blue Line. Oh, of course, it'll be like Android kernel, Google SCMA45 or something. Bah. MSM 4.9. Did they get all boring with their names? Oh, they have crosshatch. Maybe that's the one. Boot DTS. Qualcomm. Blue Line. Oh, is this really crosshatch specific? Oh. Um what do they put they have their like vendor subdirectory now, don't they? No? What? Oh, it's in DTS Google. Oh dear. Oh wow. And these are all. This is very confusing. SCM845 V2. Why you do this, Google? Well, here it is. Um, to do. This doesn't tell us the model, which is kind of what we want to know. So, fingertips, passive touchscreen controller. Wow, this is ridiculous. Almost 5,000 lines. Does mainline have anything? STMFTF.c or FTS? Um, Working on a driver for Oneplus and people can install it on PocoF1 too. What sort of drivers did you have in mind there? For things like the charging and battery fuel gauging. Those are drivers that are not device specific. Those are drivers for parts of the PMIC, which is the same hardware in both devices. It's not really different to like a computer, except that you can't, change stuff after the fact. There's only needs to be one driver for the AMD RX 580, for example, and whatever computer you plug it into, the driver will work. Likewise, you only need one driver for the SMB2 charger on the PMI 8998 PMIC, and all of the devices that have that PMIC will be able to use the driver. There are situations where, for example, the OnePlus 6, some features are like broken because OnePlus wanted to do their own fast charging stuff. But for the most part, you can just drop it in. Well, I have no idea if this driver will work. Oh, there's a register map, so we can at least compare that. But I mean, that's a 5,000 line driver, and this one is not even 1,000. That's impressive. And considering this is not even the only file, this has a bunch of other stuff. In fact, the firmware is just in a header file. Amazing. FTS command. Hover. Enter. Wow, this deals with like your finger hovering over the touchscreen. That's rather amazing. Self auto tune. X96. 95. Yeah, these registers seem to match up actually. Amazing. So we should be able to get touch to work on the Pixel 3 with this. Oh. Yeah, I kind of rushed the typing. First I is capitalized. Let's fix that. There we go. Hello. Wow. The YouTube algorithm is not being kind to me today, although I probably should have planned a little more in advance. Run out of things to do. Alright, our kernel is compiled successfully, so that's pretty nice. I guess we can cherry pick the PinePhone Pro DTS. But there's a lot of missing patches. Alright. Shall we boot test on the PinePhone Pro? Seems like a good idea. I think what we can do is check out, what was the branch? PPP 5.16.7. Or whatever my branch was called. And okay, so now we'll just build again. Oh, and this will take a while again. Aha. What happens when you don't think things through? How many cores does my current CPU have? 8. I have a Ryzen 7 3700X. It does the job, but I wouldn't complain to get something new. It's been on my mind to upgrade for a while. Elevator music plays. Yeah, I'm sorry. Compiling code is boring. And my mind is blank. What would you like to hear about? I have a lot of stuff on my desk. Too much stuff. It does need to get tidied. Anyone here owned an original PinePhone? One doesn't have a battery in it. I haven't used it very much, but it's a neat little device. GPU, I have an RX 570. I used to have a 1060, and well, me and video drivers don't get along very well. And I really wanted to switch to Sway, so Manjaro Community Edition. Is that like what you use on your PinePhone? Mm. The PinePhone Pro, I do really enjoy. I would like to use it more, but yeah, I think it needs to be a bit more usable from the software side of things. The fact that it runs PanFast GPU drivers though is super cool. It's genuinely amazing that we have these like open source GPU drivers. To be honest. The PinePhone Pro is, I think, like maybe 60% as powerful as a STM845 device. I think something like that. 845 shreds in GPU though, from what I understand. You wonder why the 845 platform specifically got so much mainline support? That's a very good question, and it has a very exciting answer, and a long answer. I don't think I'll go into it here, but you can certainly check out my FOSDEM talk, if you're interested. I go into some more detail there about why things are the way they are. yeah, Adreno hardware is kind of ridiculous. I would very much like to get where is it? Where is it? This one. This is a OnePlus 7 Pro. Let's see. Whoa. Transitions. I think it has a battery. This phone is fantastic. You can buy one of these for about £200 now. It's ridiculous. It's huge. Almost 7 inches. And, you know, it has the fancy pop-up camera. It has a 1440p 90Hz display, which is a lot of pixels, a lot of speed, and it is great to use. It'll be very exciting to get mainline running on this. But yeah, I have to say, so the 7 Pro is a nice device. Currently I use a OnePlus 9, and the trade-off is so they're about the same size. There's really not much difference. But the 7 Pro has more screen. It's got curved edges, and the screen like curves, which took me a really long time to get used to. It is also a high resolution. It's 1440p compared to the OnePlus 9, but it's only 90 Hz, and the OnePlus 9 is 1080p and 120 Hz, and that extra 30 makes a difference. It's not huge, but it's like one of those things where you notice it, and then it's kind of frustrating if you have to go back. I mean, I'd be more than happy with either device. The more pixels on the 7 Pro are pretty good. The fact that it's a low refresh rate, I mean, after like 3 days, you don't notice it anymore. So, yeah, you can run it at 1080p. This is actually a real problem that I had for a very long time with stock OnePlus firmware on here. The code which deals with dynamically changing the display resolution and having Android cope with it properly was an absolute mess, and it didn't work properly at all, and it would constantly glitch out, and the phone would get stuck displaying like flickering between 1080p and 1440p, and it was really, really horrible. So I'm glad to have a phone which doesn't do like dynamic resolution anymore, to be honest. Anyway. Let's see if this PinePhone Pro is gonna boot for us. Oh. My pile of devices is large enough that they start slipping off the back of my desk. Thankfully the floor is carpet. It's only happened once. And I don't know where my micro SD card reader is. This is the other problem that I have with having to flash an SD card. Ah, camera died. Thank you for the ping. What a nuisance. Well, I guess we won't be boot testing this today then. F to the micro SD card reader. I do have another one, but it's like 10 years old, and I don't know if it'll work. So let's see. Whoa. It does work. Fantastic. Alrighty, so we can build a new kernel package with our kernel binaries that we just built. Use some more porridge. And sad part is that main learning is so far behind in time. Well, that's not even really true anymore. Or at least, it's starting to reach the point where it isn't. Traditionally, like, it was many years behind because a lot of work was required, but we're now in a situation where Qualcomm are funding a lot of upstream development for their platforms. For example, the new Qualcomm 8 Gen 1 or SM8450 got day one support in upstream Linux. Like on the day that the SoC was announced, patches were sent to the mailing list because they made that happen. They gave developers at Linera access to the hardware so they could do mainline bring up, and yeah, we are starting to reach a position where it's getting feasible to ship mainline on devices, especially if you don't mind going back a few generations. So there are still Snapdragon 845 devices like which are new. There was some handheld game console thing that shipped with 845 quite recently. There's the FXX Pro 1, which is shipping with the Snapdragon 660, which also has really good support with upstream-ish kernels. What's it like working on the kernel? Good fun, I say. It's definitely something I'd recommend like doing if you find the ideas interesting. And I think it's surprisingly like, I mean, most things are hard to get into. It takes a long time to get over the like initial learning curve, and there's still so many things which I don't understand about the Linux kernel. But when you can get like a phone and say like I'm gonna make this phone run Linux, it's kind of it's a tangible thing which you can do, and you can spend like a long time on it. It took me months to get the touchscreen to work on the Oneplus 6, for example, but at the end of it, you learn so much, and you get that reward of like, this phone now kind of runs Linux, which to me is, I don't know, it's still unbelievable, to be honest. 750G, yeah. PinePhone 4 is working pretty well. Huge shout out to Zentu for doing a lot of work on that. Wasn't Android originally supposed to mainline before Google bought it? I have no idea. The Chrome OS team enforced mainline. I forgot the SD card parameter. So every single Chromebook that you can buy runs mainline Linux, like very close to mainline. They have some pretty strict rules in place there. So, for example, that is the only reason why there are some like MediaTek SoCs that have mainline Linux support, which is huge. So yeah, unfortunately with Android, because Android has existed for longer, and the way that the relationship between the Google and Android developers works is very different to like Google and Chrome OS vendors work. The Chrome OS team have a lot more control. All of the software updates for Chrome OS come from Google, whereas all of the software updates for Android devices come from the vendor. Oh no. Alright, so it seems like this other micro SD card reader I have is broken. Fantastic. I have this other one, but it's like missing the case. So it's just this tiny circuit board with USB pads on it. Means you have to find some like cardboard or something to wedge it into the USB port. Let's see if we can't do that. Whoa. Sorry about that. Oh dear. My keyboard has a suspend button on it. It's very easy to press. Yeah. Thankfully, okay. PC recovered. Hmm. Yeah. We good now? I think we're good now. Sorry, had to grab an adapter. It's becoming a bit of a disaster. Oh well, it's not gonna work. It is not gonna work for me today. So I'll have to boot test these later. Bed reveal. Yeah. That is bed. Big bed. It's not even a double. It I think looks bigger on camera. Just one of those things. Well, exciting. This usually works. I got some cardboard. I got some wiggling. I guess the SD card reader isn't gonna work today. Crap! I can't believe I lost the only one I have, which does actually do anything. Oh, I'm gonna give up looking. Oh god. One day I'll even oil my microphone stand. Okay, well. Hasn't this been fun? Let's see what's happening with post-market OS. iPhone 4 gains UFS support. Have a nice meal, by the way. Yeah, I'm eating porridge. It's good, though it's cold by now. So, there we go. Cool. There's pretty good progress being made on the PinePhone 4, I think. Whoa. Damn, the corners on this thing is so round. I think he's got the touchscreen to work. Not 100%. Well, Pixel 5 will have the same SoC, so you need someone to do the device specific stuff, but having the SoC be supported is kind of a pretty good step. The PinePhone 4 seems to use some interesting hardware. I think the touchscreen driver is not super great, and like the haptics driver, for example, is a big mess, but alright. Yeah. Oh, still getting Nokia N900. That USB device info. Oh. Interesting. I'm not sure what the benefit of this is. Device info USB ID vendor. Uh-huh. Oh. Interesting. Well, I think I'm gonna end it here. Yeah. Hopefully we'll send these PinePhone Pro patches up soon, and I'll have some motivation to work on some more interesting things. But thanks for y'all for showing up. Oh, definitely. I feel like I say this every time I stream, but it would be great to do this more regularly. Yeah. Hard to find things to do and then to actually want to do them at the right time. Like, I know there are a lot of things I could be working on, but yeah. Such as, anyway, I'll see you later. Thanks for coming along.